Voilà, comme il est 11 heures passées, on va démarrer cette grande journée consacrée au philosophe des médias Vilém Flusser. Donc, je suis très heureuse ici d'accueillir les enseignants de l'université de la Fachhochschule de Dortmund, et notamment son professeur, Herr Dr. Marburger, André Marcel, qui est avec nous et qui conduit un programme sur Flusser depuis de longues années, notamment au sein de la ville de Robion. Flusser est un philosophe extrêmement important, notamment dans les pays germaniques. Il a été découvert très tard en France, extrêmement tard. Ses textes ont été traduits à partir des années 90, alors qu'il a commencé à écrire, bien sûr, dans les années 70. Avec une pensée tout à fait fascinante sur la question des machines et des médias. Et il se trouve que Flusser a terminé la fin de ses jours dans la petite ville de Robion, où il a continué d'écrire. Il est même intervenu à l'école de la photographie. Il est intervenu aussi durant les rencontres, mais il est resté toujours un penseur assez confidentiel. Même si après sa mort, voilà, en France, à partir des années 2000, 90 et 2000, on a commencé à traduire ces textes qui ont, selon moi, même si des penseurs et historiens comme Marc Leno, qui nous fait l'honneur de sa présence ici, a énormément œuvré pour faire connaître sa pensée, reste toujours, je trouve, assez mal considéré, en fait, voilà, malgré la puissance de sa pensée et sur ce que ça implique. Alors, moi, personnellement, je voulais revenir un peu sur Flusser pour introduire, et en disant que j'étais très heureuse d'accueillir ici ce symposium organisé par la Fachhochschule de Dortmund grâce à ses enseignants, parce que ça faisait totalement sens aussi avec la manière dont j'envisage ici l'école de la photographie, dans la manière dont je l'ai orientée, dans la manière dont j'ai revendiqué le fait que ça soit une école de la photographie et non pas de l'image, justement, et qui prend racine beaucoup dans la pensée de Flusser. Alors, il faut savoir que moi, personnellement, j'ai découvert Flusser en 2002-2003, au moment où ces textes ont été traduits, et c'était au moment où j'étais en poste en Allemagne, au musée Martha Herford, qui était un musée d'art et de design, ce qui était assez peu commun. Donc, je travaillais beaucoup sur les rapprochements entre art, sciences, techniques et design, mais aussi mode. Et j'étais à l'époque, effectivement, totalement à l'affût de moindres textes qui pouvaient être publiés, notamment dans le domaine de la théorie du design. Et autant vous dire qu'à l'époque, et je dirais toujours aujourd'hui, ces textes sont assez peu nombreux. Donc, quand j'ai vu ce petit livre apparaître, je me suis jetée dessus. Et là, ça a été un choc intellectuel assez considérable, parce que je trouvais écrit de manière à la fois totalement percutante, mais incroyablement visionnaire, la manière dont Flusser abordait le design, qui a d'ailleurs totalement changé, enfin qui a contribué à changer beaucoup ma vision du design dans sa relation aux arts visuels notamment. Et pour revenir juste sur cet épisode, c'est-à-dire que Flusser, il a écrit cette petite philosophie du design après sa philosophie de la photographie, dont j'ai pris connaissance postérieurement, en fait, puisque j'ai d'abord lu sa philosophie du design. Et il expliquait comment ce domaine, en fait, totalement sous-estimé, sous-étudié, parce que pour les beaux-arts relevant trop des arts appliqués, étant trop liés à la société marchande, aux produits de consommation, il expliquait comment ce domaine, en fait, était extrêmement important, puisqu'il s'ingérait, il infiltrait à peu près toutes les couches et toutes les strates de nos vies quotidiennes, du plus petit objet de l'allumette, du stylo-bille, en passant par les panneaux jusqu'aux paysages urbains et même naturels, parce que tous nos parcs naturels sont eux-mêmes totalement designés, et que le pouvoir du designer était énorme, en fait, et qu'il ne fallait pas sous-estimer, qu'il fallait justement considérer ce pouvoir, et le fait que le design, du fait qu'il pouvait condenser à la fois la création, l'art, mais aussi l'économie et l'industrie, avait en soi généré, en fait, contenait des enjeux qui étaient essentiels, notamment face à des changements techniques, technologiques qui allaient devenir dans notre société, et que l'artiste pouvait avoir, le créateur à ce niveau-là, pour avoir un rôle absolument déterminant. Et il montrait aussi comment le design, en fait, remettait en cause différentes strates de notre rapport à la machine. Et ça, c'était assez incroyable, hein, puisqu'il a déjà émis cette pensée dans les années 80. Et il montre comment le design, dans ce livre, avec notamment, il revient notamment sur l'invention du parapluie, que je vous recommande chaudement, comment cet objet aussi bête et aussi inutile et futilement recense, en fait, condense en fait des inventions absolument fondamentales pour l'humanité, de la question de la pesanteur, en passant par le chapiteau, par le saut en parachute, enfin toutes les applications que cet objet aussi simple qu'un parapluie peut impliquer dans nos sociétés, dans notre vision aussi philosophique par rapport à cette question d'apesanteur. Et il montrait comment le design, effectivement, dans son rapport à la machine, a totalement changé notre rapport à la machine, inversant totalement les rôles. C'est-à-dire que l'outil designé, il part du silex, qui est là juste pour être utile, pour aider l'homme, finalement s'insère dans la vie, devient une prothèse, et finalement de prothèse en prothèse, d'aide en aide, de soulagement en soulagement, finit par dominer l'homme, et finalement c'est l'homme qui devient au service de la machine et plus inversement. Donc c'est déjà un changement de paradigme qui était totalement incroyable, au moment où je lisais ce texte. Il expliquait aussi comment le design aussi redéfinissait le rapport entre art et science qui, jusqu'au 19e siècle, était totalement séparé. C'est-à-dire qu'on avait les arts appliqués d'un côté, enfin, on avait en tout cas les beaux-arts d'un côté, l'artisanat qui était très distingué de tout ce qui était de l'ordre de la technique, de la fabrication des machines et des outils, et que cette scission, cette distinction, grâce aux arts appliqués et ensuite au design, a permis de reconsidérer, de regrouper en fait ces domaines, de les faire interagir, et à cela s'ajoute aussi la question de l'économie, de la pensée économique, qu'aujourd'hui encore, nous, on a tendance à mettre sur un autre côté, un autre niveau. Alors, il montre comment cette pensée économique infiltre et est extrêmement déterminante aussi, qu'elle est déjà surplombante dans nos sociétés et comment elle influe et elle définit aussi notre relation aux objets, et que tout ça se conditionne aussi dans en fait, se regroupe et se dynamise en tout cas dans le design. Outre ça aussi, il abordait aussi l'aspect éthique et moral que recouvrait aussi le design dans le fait de fabriquer des armes, des avions de guerre, et quelle était aussi la responsabilité du designer. Et en cela, il mettait en avant déjà toutes les questions qu'on se pose sur les réseaux sociaux, sur la responsabilité des GAFA, notamment dans les problèmes juridiques qu'on rencontre aujourd'hui, qui sont assez édifiants sur la façon dont les nouvelles technologies influent et qui, dans ce méandre de programmes algorithmiques, qui de l'œuf et de la poule aujourd'hui peut être responsable, voilà, quand les machines voilà, donnent lieu à des actes, ou en tout cas ont une certaine influence dans certains axes actes qui ne sont pas permises, notamment par la loi. Je pense aussi au dark website et à tous ces prolongements, toutes ces problématiques auxquelles on se confronte aujourd'hui. Et ce sont tous ces aspects en fait, que Flusser a extrêmement, de manière visionnaire, extrêmement tôt abordé, que j'ai pu retrouver, pour moi, qui trouvait ces prolongements dans la philosophie de la photographie. On peut dire que ça a été d'abord le moteur, puisqu'il a écrit ce livre en premier. Mais moi, dans ma lecture, en tout cas, j'en ai trouvé son plein prolongement dans ce que c'est que l'image mécanique, et de dire que, comme il le disait pour le design, hein, que tous ces objets qui influent, qui infiltrent, qui dominent notre vie, aussi la conditionnent totalement. Et c'est la même réflexion qu'il a au sujet de la photographie, où il dit qu'il ne faut pas forcément aborder la photographie comme l'image de ce qu'elle va produire, mais comment elle produit cette image. Et que tout l'appareil que l'homme a créé, qui part de la chambre noire jusqu'aujourd'hui au smartphone, donc il n'en parle pas à l'époque puisque les smartphones n'existaient pas, mais il avait déjà des pensées très, très, très aiguës sur ce que sur le potentiel de ces interfaces, en fait, comment tout ça conditionne, en tout cas définit notre manière de considérer notre environnement et la réalité. Qu'on ne peut pas seulement considérer le produit fini, mais comment on crée ce produit et comment on le fabrique. Et c'est qu'à cette condition, à l'une de ces conditions, que l'on peut aborder, qu'on peut affronter, qu'on peut accompagner en tout cas, ou jouer avec ou contre les machines, comme le disait Marc aussi, Leno, dans son analyse de Flusser, mais remarque, Leno et tous les intervenants ici reviendront bien sûr beaucoup plus longuement sur ces aspects. Voilà, donc c'est à l'aune de toutes ces considérations, de ces réflexions qui sont toujours très importantes, parce que j'ai eu l'occasion de relire Flusser sur la philosophie évidemment de la photographie, et même 10 ans après, en le relisant, on en a une lecture différente parce que la société a évolué et qu'il a réussi à analyser avant tout le monde ces changements. Et donc, on comprend certaines de ces anticipations sont de mieux en mieux comprises plus nos sociétés avancent. Donc, c'est pour ça que je vous recommande chaudement la lecture de Flusser. Et en tout cas, je suis vraiment ravie qu'on puisse accueillir aujourd'hui ce symposium pour continuer la réflexion, pour la poursuivre, pour l'accompagner, qui, parmi d'autres réflexions qu'évidemment nous avons au sein de l'école, mais qui voilà, me semble tout à fait signifiante. Et je remercie chaleureusement Marcel André d'avoir voulu m'avoir permis d'accompagner et d'avoir organisé ce colloque, et à qui je laisse la parole. Alors Nicolas Giraud, qui malheureusement avait un empêchement, il est avec nous en ligne. Il interviendra, qui suit de près le colloque, puisqu'il l'a organisé avec Marcel André, Marc Burger et l'ensemble des intervenants. Était hier à Robion, puisque vous étiez à Robion, et interviendra en fait à 14h30. Et puis, il y aura une performance voilà, qui aura lieu, alors on avait mis 16h30, mais ça sera plutôt 17h30, dans le hall d'entrée, des deux artistes qui ont été invités par Marcel André, qui sont ici présents avec nous et que je remercie, qui ont déjà fait leur installation, qui est une installation qui a été justement pensée en écho à la pensée de Flusser, voilà, Keren et Kai, qui se présenteront voilà, à ce moment-là à 17h30. Donc je vous invite chaudement à nous rejoindre aussi pour la performance. Voilà, merci à vous, et je laisse la parole à Herr Professor Dr. Herr Mark Burger.
Okay, for everyone that this will be in English, and if I have longer quotes, I translated them into French, but I used DeepL, you know, like a translation program. So maybe the translations, I checked them a little bit, but maybe they're not like completely perfect. Excuse me for that, but at least I've tried to make it as accessible as possible. So as you see up above, it's a brief introduction, so I will try to explain why I think it was a good idea, why we thought it was a good idea to make this symposium, and to have a connection between Robion and the school in Arles. And Veronique talked about it already a little bit. She actually said almost everything that I'm going to say now during the last half hour, but she said it in French, and I will talk in English, and so it's kind of different. But also I brought some slides, you know, with some material that you might not know, or actually I'm pretty sure that some of it, at least you don't know. So let's start with 81, or at least now let's start with me, which is a little bit egoistic. But so the first slide I'm showing is this one. So it's photography, you see, and you see on the left side Vilém Flusser, and on the left side, on the right side, you might see that it's me. But it was in 2000, I think it was in 2002, and in 2001, we got to know each other on the same day when I met Siegfried Zielinski. So Siegfried Zielinski, who will talk after me, was responsible for the Flusser archive. It came to Cologne in '98, and so he was the director of the Flusser archive, and she was visiting every year, to see if everything is working well. And I was sitting in the archive with her, and back then Sylvia Wagnermeier was like working in the archive, and so the three of us were sitting there, and Siegfried came in, and he introduced himself saying, my name is Siegfried, and I said, well, my name is Marcel, and that's how we met. And then, because I was starting my research on my PhD, don't hit me, because I was starting my PhD at the time, I was hanging out there all the time. So at one point, Siegfried said, okay, well, start working here. And so this was going on for several years that we are working together. And I'm still very grateful, Siegfried, that we could, that you invited me to be part of the Flusser archive. And so I'm glad you're here. So he will talk after me, but I would also like to thank everyone who's involved in the process. Veronique, of course, thank you very much for having us here. And I would like to thank Gwendoline, I don't know if she's around right now, or Tatjana, Gwendoline, here, Tatjana, who's like the technical support, and also, I now forgot her name, who's doing the press work and stuff. And I also want to thank the artists. Two are still in the car, so they are coming. They did the exhibition. We had to, to split the exhibition in two. So one half is in Robillon. We had the opening yesterday and a few talks already. And the second half, and Veronique mentioned it already, is upstairs, and you will see a performance. And I hope you join it, because it's really it's going to be great. And it's actually the first performance in the first exhibition, although being a couple for years that they're doing together. So it's a world premiere. So please, if you can, stay for that. So what came out is this book, and you see it's the same title that we used for the Symposium, Flusser und die Kunst. So it's only in German available, but it's in the library for years already. So if you want to read something about Flusser and the arts in German, go downstairs to the library and you can find the book downstairs. So now let's jump into the subject. So you see the both sitting there, Edith on the left and Vilém on the right side, living in Robillon already. So this picture was taken there. And here you have the calendar. They have this calendar this calendar is just to write in what they are doing and what they're up to. And since they were traveling a lot, you see a lot of different places. But you see here down on the, vendredi, you see that they were in Robillon, and that's actually the first mentioning of Robillon I found, which was in 1980. So then you see this this letter he writes to David Flusser. It's his cousin who lived in Israel. And you see up there it's Jerusalem, and so he's writing about that he's visiting him and giving a talk at the university. But then in the third part you see, wir sind dabei, ein kleines Maß in Robillon, das klassische Robillonum zu kaufen. So we are about to buy a little house in Robillon. And it's 5 kilometers from Cavaillon, at the bottom of Luberon, and so on. So that's the first mentioning I found of him moving to you see it's from March 80, that he's moving to Robillon. Now here is the last letter he wrote from London. They were living in London before, just for a short time, living with their daughter. And that's the last letter that he writes from London before he moves to Robillon. And also he's mentioning that that his next address will be in Robillon. So he's saying, okay, please send the next letter to Robillon. And of course, I also have this one. So that's the first letter that they got in Robillon, 4th of January 81. So that's when they finally moved there. So it's not a jubilee because it's 81, but my argument will be that 81, moving to Robillon in January 81 is kind of special in the way like 81 is a special year because there are a lot of things happening in 81. And I will talk about that a little bit. 81 was a symposium near Düsseldorf in Schloss Mickeln, like a chateau. And that was a symposium that Flusser attended. That was the first time he was in Germany talking about photography, and actually it was one of the first times he talked about photography. And the way he did it, his lecture was called "How to Decipher Photography," was a real success. And also in 81, I will talk about it later a little bit, he wrote Vampirotores Infernales. It was not published in 81, but he wrote it in 81 in French and in German. And so here you see a letter he got from Gerhard Ulrich, who attended the symposium in Düsseldorf, near Düsseldorf. And so he's writing, yeah, it was really nice meeting you and stuff. And Flusser invited him to be part of the Biennale in Sao Paulo. I will talk about it later on a little bit. He was involved in the organization of the 12th Biennale in Sao Paulo in 73. And that's kind of why he came to Europe in 72. And for other reasons, anyway, he stayed in 72. He stayed in Europe and moved back from Brazil to Europe. Not to Roubion yet, that was in 81, as we saw, but to other parts. So he made contacts with some artists he met at the symposium. You see here the title. You also see Vilém Flusser there on the left in the picture. That's the cover of the book they made out of the symposium. You see Vilém very prominent there on the cover. And you see the title of the photography of the symposium, which is kind of amazing if we look at it today, because a real question is photography, is that art? Does photography belong into the museum? So we wouldn't ask this question. Back then, photography kind of became art and came into museums in the 70s already, but still it was a real issue to discuss at the time. And the important thing here is that Flusser met Andreas Müller-Pohle. You see him down there. He was a photographer. He came there as a photographer and was talking about his work. But also he was already back then publishing a magazine which was called European Photography. And because he was so amazed by the lecture that Vilém Flusser gave, and also the talks they had with each other, the conversations they had afterwards, that he said, okay, Vilém, you want to write a book about what you said here on the symposium? And Vilém was directly saying, yes, of course, yes, I'm writing a book. And he actually did it in 6 weeks. So the philosophy for photography, Flusser did in only 6 weeks, pretty much. And the reason why he was so directly into the subject, Vilém Flusser, was not because he was a big fan of photography, but because he had problems for decades. He had problems to be published in Germany. And since, although from Prague, it was for Jewish people especially, it was normal to speak German in Prague. So his language was German. So Flusser always wrote in German, and then also in other languages like in Portuguese mainly, but then also later in English and in French. So he always wanted to be published in Germany. He never was published in Germany. Also a few articles he had in newspapers in the 60s and later on, but he never managed to publish a book in Germany. So when Andreas Müller-Pohle asked him to make a book out of what he had in this lecture, he was completely on it and was enthusiastic about the thing. So just a quote, and now you see, I tried to translate it using a program myself, but you can see the original text up there in German, and which was was published in the book I just showed. And the funny thing is, I read it in English. So the point is to get to the bottom of the manipulative connotation, to decipher why the French actually buy yellow petroleum. We can save this story from different groups, form different groups, and meet up again later in Arles or Avignon. So that was the last sentence of the discussion he had with the audience after his lecture. And he's, as you see in 1983, he says, well, why don't we meet up in Arles or Avignon, which is kind of amazing, because what's the connection to Arles at the time? I will talk about it later. So kind of, we are here now in Arles, talking about Flusser. So that's the book you all know, I guess, the philosophy for photography, which came out in Germany in '83, and there's an English version. There will be a French version, of course, and Mark will. Yes, of course, but you will talk about the French version, so I'm not going to talk about this much longer. So the reason we started all this was, because there was this connection to Robillon, like a few years ago for the 100th birthday. It was planned to have like a symposium, a meeting, something in Robillon to celebrate his birthday. And luckily, the lady who bought the house from Victor Flusser speaks not only German, but is also very much involved in the cultural, touristic scene in Robillon and the whole area. So she was very, like from the beginning on when we contacted her, it was clear that she would support. And so it's a great luck that she bought the house and not someone else. So we always can, join. We can always sit there together, and she's a great cook and stuff, and a great person. And I'm really glad you're here. Corinne Rousseau, she's sitting over here. And it's always a pleasure to be with you in Robillon. So thank you very much that we can do that. So this is, we did something before already, but this is an exhibition where this kind of cyclus started, that we still doing an exhibition that was just on the relationship between Flusser and the village of Robillon and the whole area. And this is the one we have now. The poster you saw upstairs already. I've talked about it. And so this is supposed to be an event where artists are invited that have a connection to Flusser for several reasons. Like the piece we're showing in Robillon right now for Matthias and Laura, and they still haven't arrived yet. So they should be here by now, but you will see them later. Anyways, so they are having they are working dialogical. So the dialogical aspect in creation, and creative work is very important for Flusser. And then you mentioned, Corinne, Veronique, sorry, the apparatus aspect, playing against the apparatus. That's something you will find in the work of Kai upstairs. He's kind of, the rusty thing you see upstairs is kind of, you could see it as a black box. So you kind of have the possibility to look inside the black box, and you also have to, you can press a button and then something is happening. So this is a picture of the exhibition, which is in Robillon right now. Dialogical photography, let's say. So they build a camera, or they have two options. They have one camera and two cameras. Anyways, there's only a picture possible. All the cameras only producing a picture when they press on a button at the really same time, and otherwise they don't have a picture. So whatever is coming out of this is a photo that only exists because of the two of them. So the authorship is divided. There are two people and not only one person who's creating something. So they kind of rebuild the cameras. So now let's come to the subject, Flusser and the arts, and why is the connection between Flusser and the arts important? Of course, there's photography, but in general, my thesis is that the arts are kind of everything that wherever Flusser kind of leads to, and it's kind of the solution for a problem that is showed here. That's a letter he wrote to Alexander Bloch in '77. At the time, he was already teaching in Aix. He was teaching in Marseille-Luminy, and in Marseille-Luminy, he had some lectures on codes, on communication structures, and so on. So his starting point always, Flusser's starting point is always communication, or what he called it communicology. And so he came up with this problem. You know, this is what I call the media chronological model. So it starts with the monkey falling from the tree, becoming a subject, and then there's some alienation happening. And so the monkey, you know, kind of tries to do something against the alienation, not being part of the world anymore. And so he's inventing objects and paintings, so cave paintings, for example. But whatever is all the time, what is happening is that the media, the new media that is kind of the leading media, leads to the next alienation step, and then comes the next one, which is writing, leads to the next alienation, and so on, ending with technical images. So beginning with photography, we are more and more influenced by technical images, and Veronique said it before, it completely changes our being in the world. So it completely changes how we think, how we act, and how we you know, talk to each other. So it's really changing everything, and of course, being such a big influence the like media have on us, it also means that it affects art, on our, you know, producing art, how we talk about art, and so on. But also, you see the last question mark there. Flusser always, you know, asked himself and others, okay, what is the next, you know, way out of this alienation? So how we deal with the technical image, with the problem that technical images, kind of the apparatus and so on, how the things are affecting us, how we get out of this. So what is the next big thing, the next big leading media is one question, and also what we do against the alienation phase that is happening right now, how we deal with the apparatus. And he gives a few solutions. He never really completely 100% answered this question, so the kind of question mark is still existing in a way. But there are several texts and several arguments where always the arts are the answer. You know, so artists can help us. Artists can save us from this alienation. So I brought you this one, which is you know, saying something similar, kind of, you know. So you see the media chronological down there a little bit. So I just to, you know, to have something in French that I found, and also you see here mon codifie. That's how he also called his lecture in Marseille and so on. So and you see A, B, C, D. So par le techno-image, you know, that's post, he called it already post-historique. Well, he's not the only one who said calls something post-historic, but yeah, you see, so that was, and you also see up there October 77. So at the time he was working on this problem. Is it enough time for you to read the slides, or should I? Can you follow me? I mean, like regarding the language, my English, my thoughts. It's simple. It's not too I really kept it. So, well, this is a long one. Now you can't read it because I'm standing here, but you can, yeah, you can read the French one. So I'm showing a few quotes now where he kind of is talking about the problem, and of course my argument that that the arts are a possible answer. So instead of a reality that can be grasped and explained, there are only possibilities to be realized. Possibilities. You know? What was your word yesterday, Siegfried? You said the potentials, right? You said yeah. There are possibilities to be realized. And as scientific knowledge becomes a projection of subjective thought models, the distinction between science and art becomes zero and void. And science appears as one of the art forms. The projection of concrete worlds is something we expect from art, imagination and technical images. So he also calls it reine Ästhetik, pure aesthetic. And so now he's talking about cave paintings. While cave paintings were created to produce a representation of a situation that could serve as a model for future treatment of things, the new images were produced to bring out the unexpected from given possibilities. So regarding technical images, technically produced images are replacing writing as the guiding code medium. This is changing our entire existence in the world, not just our communication, but our thinking, actions, and very being. Since the prevailing means of communication determine our entire existence in the world, this also influences art production and art reception. And another one, you know, he talks about Einbildungskraft a lot. You know, it's a word that Kant already used and others. And it's a word that kind of only exists in this sense, only exists in German, unfortunately. So Flusser had problems to translate it. Because he makes a differentiation between Imagination and Einbildungskraft, also Imagination und Einbildungskraft. And so in English he says, okay, this is imagination and the other one is new imagination. That's kind of an ability that people, I'm just going to read the quote. Flusser understands imagination as the human ability to step back from an object and form a picture of it. Starting from something that can be perceived by the senses, imagination enables us to create an image of an object. Imagination, on the other hand, refers to the ability with which humans can create something in the world independently of an object from within themselves. So it's a projection, you know, it's not something you don't see anything and something and then you kind of copy it or something, you project it into the world. The sequence object, human image, thus becomes human design object, whereby the object is understood to be the techno-image, the technical image. So now I have two quotes from his autobiography, Bodenlos, where he writes about many things, but he also writes about some friends he had in Brazil, and actually most of them didn't like it very much when they read the articles he wrote about them. Some were dead already, but the others were not amused too much, to be honest. Anyways, so I just found two arguments in this book when he writes about artist friends, you know, that are also doing the same. So is it okay, by the way? Are the translations kind of okay? Veronique, the French, is that, how was the job the program did? Was that okay? Yeah, so next argument. Mira uses her imagination not to grasp the world of concrete things, because this world slips through our fingers, but to give concrete form to the world of abstract thoughts. One aspect of the world of thoughts today is that it has become unimaginable. This contributes enormously to our alienation. We cannot imagine what our thoughts, for example, scientific ones, mean. A new kind of imagination is needed for this, and Mira wants to mobilize this new kind for us. This is of extraordinary importance because what these experiments point to is a new way of being in the world for human beings. And then a text he wrote about Samson Flexer, another artist, another friend of Flusser in Brazil. An artist is someone. Maybe I should read one in German, so that because you read it in okay. An artist is someone who projects his dreams onto reality, and when these dreams overturn the foundations of reality, they become reality. And the artist has been the avant-garde of the revolution. In this sense, art is an organ of humanity for designing and realizing new realities. So, if you talk about, art, it's art production. Someone is in the atelier producing someone. You make pictures, then it's communication. So you make an exhibition, you show it to the world. So there's always this communication part when it comes to art. And then there's art reception, of course. And I will try to very shortly, of course, try to explain or show how Flusser was dealing with this. So art production. He always talked about the black box apparatus, but we've heard about it already. So, and this would be also part of the other talks. So, techno imagination is is important, so the ability to decipher images. And then you have the dialogues. I mentioned this already, dialogical networking, and you have this, neue Einbildungskraft, a new imagination. So these are the things that are important when it comes to art production in the view from Flusser. This is an art critic. Flusser wrote some art critics, but actually most of the art critics are kind of, all of them are kind of from his perspective. Anyways, I just picked two that are kind of interesting. I think one is about the work Transformance by Andreas Müller-Pohle, his editor. His eye does not serve the blind, and this was actually also work that Andreas Müller-Pohle was showing in 81 at the Symposium in Schloss Mückel near Düsseldorf. His eye does not serve the blind apparatus program, but rather blinds itself in order to undermine it and free itself from it. His freedom is the freedom to interrupt the tendency of the inevitable occurrence of chance, the freedom to inform. So there's a random factor that Flusser sees in that, and also we're talking about the playful thing, so the ludic aspect of it, and to work with the random factor, with aleatoric factors, was also something that Flusser saw as a possibility to work against the apparatus. Then the second one, he wrote about the famous work that you probably all know, Lauf der Dinge, by Peter Fischler and David Weiss. And it's also one of his best art critics. So whenever you want to read something, an art critic that Flusser did, then choose this one, or Tsai Gerber, and there are another two ones that are really good. Anyway, so Lauf der Dinge, the course of the events, is an interplay of necessity and chance, in which even the most unlikely combinations must eventually come about. Then the dialogical aspect of art production. True creativity, however, is the insertion of foreign elements, the insertion of sounds into existing context. Sounds are Geräusche in German, so it's something that is, playing against the communication process. Communication theory, so Geräusche is, what kind of causes problems. When you have someone who's sending information, someone is receiving information, the things are in between. But when it comes to creativity, because they're changing the information to something else, and then you have a new information, and that's what Flusser calls creativity. Next one, all information arises from the synthesis of previous information. There's no creatio ex nihilo, and therefore the way in which information is linked is of paramount importance. According to Flusser, this linking can only function dialogically. He kind of starting from this dialogical networking thinking, Flusser came to this idea, the telematische Gesellschaft, the telematic society, where people, sit in different spots and are communicating with each other. And not only that, they're creating something else. So they are creative together, in a group. So in Flusser's utopia of a telematic society, for example, all people are simultaneously senders and receivers of technical images. Such a society dialoguing with one another through images would be a society of artists, as he puts it in his book Into the Universe of Technical Images, ins Universum der technischen Bilder. And telematically, manipulating images would give rise to an as yet undreamed of art, namely a dialogue of images that is infinitely richer than linear historical dialogues could ever be. So he wrote this one shortly after the philosophy of photography. So then in 91, shortly before he died in a car accident, he was holding this Bochumer Vorlesungen, and this long talks that are all got published through the Flusser archive and transcripted, so in different languages. So you can still I think you still have access to this. Anyways, just one quote out of it. Creativity is basically nothing more than this dialogue about things without wanting to dominate the other person. So it also has an ethical aspect in it. When it comes to dialogues, it also has to do with power, you know, not having power. When you have an equal dialogue, it's not that someone has the power above the other person. So coming back to this media chronological model, another ethical aspect, at the end of this mental regression, so there's this one idea that after the question mark, you know, there could also be kind of a walking back, but it's not not ending at the same point, and it's not the same way back. It's something else. Dietmar Kamper, who did the first international Flusser lecture, invited by Siegfried Zielinski, also wrote about this. So at the end of this mental regression as a way out of perpetual alienation, however, it is not the former paradise state of being into the world that awaits us, but rather the other human being. Yeah, so it's a way back to the other person, and it's not to the to nature or something. So the dialogue again is really important, also when ethical. So communication and art. What is the time? I think I'm already talking too long here. Okay, so okay. So I brought you this art and communication, which was an event they had in Paris. See up there the dates. It was in '72, so it was the the first year that Flusser moved back to Europe, and he was invited by René Berger, who was an important person at the time, organizing, like creating exhibitions. He was teaching. He was a professor teaching media theory already, but he had an art historical background. But he kind of was one of the people who kind of asked the question, okay, it's what is the connection between art and media, and how is the influence of media on the art production and so on. So, which was among us kind of an important influence on Flusser. So there's also a series of lectures that René Berger gave at the time. Flusser had the program, so you know what he was talking about. There are many aspects that got more important to Flusser than in the 70s, and kind of were leading to this kind of like what I call a shift into media theory from communication. So yeah, let me start with this one. So in '71, like Flusser was working for the Biennale, not working, but he was kind of invited every once in a while from the Biennale in Sao Paulo, which is a really important Biennale, second oldest one in the world, by the way, after Venice. Then in '71 he was invited again. There was a kind of a boycott before some international artists didn't go to the Biennale in Sao Paulo because of the new regime that was there, established starting in '64, and from there was a military regime in Brazil, and so there was a boycott, and so the founder, the guy who was running the Biennale, Matarazzo, was saying, okay, we got to do something about this problem, and maybe let's do the next one, the 12th Biennale of Sao Paulo, in a different way. And so Flusser wrote this one-page essay. The marks are from me, sorry, they're not from Flusser, called Kunstausstellungen, exhibitions, art exhibitions, and he wrote it in pretty sure in '70. It's not dated, but he pretty sure wrote it in '71 before he took part at a round table. Anyways, he's writing that in an art exhibition there are things standing around in this exhibition, and then when you're a visitor, when you look at things, you can only you know, see them, but you can do nothing with them, and the things become conditions for you as a someone who, as you as an art, as a visitor of an art exhibition, and since conditions is like the opposite of freedom, to show things. Artworks in an exhibition is not adequate anymore. So we have to find something else. And the idea then was from Flusser was, and that's a proposal he did. You know, that's the kind of he said it's a resume of his contribution to the round table that then happens. Is that you see to study a way to have a consumer participate in the planning of future biennales and so on. And his idea was to found groups worldwide. So the idea was that he's meeting people, artists and curators and so on, and that they have dialogues, conversations, and then they go to like on to different levels if you want, and then at the Biennale in Sao Paulo in 73, the idea was that this whole discourses come together and then are open to the wide public. So people should not see artworks at the Sao Paulo Biennale, but just becoming part of conversations of discourses. So I mentioned René Berger already. It's now why did I choose this letter? Let me see. He was invited by him, and then sorry, it's on the right side, and I can't see it. The Biennale is becoming a disaster, right? So he had several problems with the guy who was running the Biennale, Matarazzo, for several reasons, also for money reasons. So Flusser was expecting him to send him money to Europe, and Matarazzo said no, it's too much. That's not adequate. And anyway, so. But also his idea, Flusser's idea to work without artworks and to focus on dialogues also didn't happen. And so he said it's a disaster. It's not happening anymore. And actually, Flusser didn't go, so he didn't attend the Biennale. Later on, he did, but that was years later. So that's also you see Kunst Gegenkommunikation, but I skip this and switch over to the next point, art reception. And the main point here is that Flusser, I said already, he wrote some art critics, was published as an art critic actually, but it's a different story. It has to do a bit, not being published for decades. So if someone asked him, Leonardo, for example, and other magazines, when they asked him to write art critics, he always did it, although it was not his real focus. And the successful one, if you want, are the ones that are phenomenological. Flusser was a big fan of Edmund Husserl. He also studied some Heidegger, but he didn't like him too much. But Husserl was his main philosophical influence. The second one would be Martin Buber, who focused on dialogues, so what Flusser tried, but he didn't do it too much when he wrote about art, unfortunately. But all his texts about gestures, for example, or when he wrote about stuff, so he was really good in writing about something, not putting too much knowledge avant before on the thing. So he always tried to look at things, kind of forget what he saw and do the next round, the next round. So that was kind of his approach that he said once that he got from Pilpul, a way of commenting sentences from the Talmud that are also circling kind of around the subject and you add something, a comment, you next the next comment, and so on. but the important thing is to forget the knowledge that you already have when you come to something, when you see a piece of art, for example, and to yeah, kind of your view should be as free as possible, let's say. He writes to René Berger, should an artist be informed? Shouldn't the situation be analyzed in advance using phenomenological and communicological methods? This, he argues, is the real task of art criticism today. Here he writes about Flexor, and there's an interesting passage in between. It may be that Flexor, like Vicente, experienced a crisis shortly before his death. He painted as long as he felt he had the strength to hold a brush. A few days before his death, he gave up, and there's a photograph of him on his deathbed taken by one of his students. They had always tried to convey the phenomenological method of seeing in their courses for the new generation. And with they Flusser means himself, so that he was always engaged in teaching students the phenomenological method of seeing. In the photograph using this method, Flexor can be seen with his eyes closed, his being in the world, and no longer being in the world, his closed gaze directed toward the hereafter. So now comes the Vampi, and I'm almost done. Vampiroteutes Infernalis, his important collaboration with Louis Beck. He was working with another artist, with Fred Forrest, video artist. They did some projects together. But this more important, Louis Beck was the one who brought him to, who found the house he bought in Robillon. He was the reason why he moved to the area, and they did this project together, the Vampiroteutes Infernalis, as I said, that he wrote in '81, to make kind of a circle now. And Abraham Morrow, the other important friend besides René Berger, and besides, for other reasons, Louis Beck, he wrote the introduction to this. And he says, if there's one constant in phenomenological thinking, it is the relationship to the alien. It is precisely the desire to grasp the alien, and therefore the remarkable. That's also, bringing in this random factor thing. That's also bringing something that is unexpected, and art should always touch the unexpected, should always go somewhere else, Willy Baumeister, wrote a really nice book on it in the 40s. It's called das Unbekannte in der Kunst, the unknown in the art. And if you don't know it, read it. It's really brilliant. So here you see the introduction for the Vampiroteutes, and here you see the marks. So phenomenology is there's a big circle, because yes, Abraham called it philosophy fiction, and this is the kind of corrections that Flusser did on this when Abraham sent it to him. So he's writing to Jean Gattard, and he's mentioning the Vampiroteutes. At some point, you find it faster than me, not really seeing it from here, but that's why I brought the slide. Do you know this one? You know it? Yeah, but he mentions that he's writing the Vampiroteutes Infernalis, so that's why I brought it. Okay. Yeah. But you know this one already. Okay, I was hoping that you don't know it, so that you could bring us something. Okay. That was it, except that I wanted to make a short shift. I think last year I brought all the stuff that I found in the archive, concerning the school here, because Flusser was teaching here, and that's kind of he's writing to the former director. Before it was École Nationale, it was not Supérieur, now it's Supérieur. He was writing to him and explaining what he wants to do when he gives his courses. And here you see, you know, the communication on this subject all happening in '83. So in the year that for philosophy of photography came out, he was also, you know, planning to teach here. He was attending something, but the first time he showed up in the school was in 75, and I mentioned this. What? Yeah, but anyways, he was okay. Yeah, but it's the same thing, you know, at this thing. Yeah, I just mentioned this, you know, to have this because there's also a letter, but you know, anyways. So my point was here, you know, to that we could celebrate the 50th anniversary now because it's 2005, you know. So that was the point, you know. So I'll skip this. I just wanted to show something else, yeah, which is this one. So also in '75, so we can also celebrate this if you want. That you know, they were celebrating you know, the fifth anniversary de la fondation de Institut Scientifique de Recherche Paranaturaliste, and you know, the thing that Louis Beck was doing, and you see the program, you see that Vilém Flusser, you know, is involved, Alexandre Bonnier is involved, and of course Louis Beck, the president, you know, of the club. And it's really nice because they have this thing, you know, starting at 11 o'clock, and at 12:15 already, you know, they have this the break. And it's already saying Vin Rosé du Château de San. I've checked; it's still existing, and I tried to organize some wine from that, but they only start delivering it from 250 euros on. So you know, I couldn't get a bottle. But the actual idea was that I bring a bottle, the same wine, not the same, but kind of the same rosé they were drinking 50 years ago, and that was it pretty much. So thank you for your attention. The next lecture will be by Siegfried Zielinski. Do we need a short break, or should we just keep on and have a break afterwards? We keep on. And after we have lunch, not with the same rosé, but maybe, you know, another one. So then I clear the stage for Siegfried Zielinski. So we switch the. Thank you. So you.
Okay, thanks a lot for inviting me. Usually in a symposium, the people who are speaking are introduced. As far as now, as far as I got it in French, my name was mentioned, and that I had something to do with Flusser. Perhaps I should introduce myself a little bit, otherwise you don't know where I come from and what I'm doing here today. And I think some of you in the audience will not know the many books I've written and the many texts I made. So I think it's polite that I introduce myself a little bit. I come from Berlin. I studied at the Technical University. I went there because in a very early period of time after the Second World War, in 1961, there was a famous institute founded at the Technical University. The name of the institute was Language in the Age of Technology. 61, you know. Flusser and all the rest, you know, as so-called media theoreticians, came much, much later. So for me, they are already the second or third or fourth generation, but not the first generation of media thinkers. My professor at the Technical University was a poet, Walter Höllerer, and a machine builder, Friedrich Knilly, who also was an expert on radio. And even before McLuhan, he wrote extremely interesting texts rests on the physicality of the medium and the idea that the medium is the massage, as McLuhan put it, and not the content of the medium. So we were drinking this as like mother milk in the late 60s already when I started to study, and in the early 1970s. I built up in the 1970s the first courses for media studies in Germany at the Technical University, closely connected with the 22 faculties for mathematics and engineering we had, but also connected very strongly with the artists in the early Berlin scene and of course with philosophers and poets. There I learned what it means, what Roger Caillois, your great French author, calls thinking diagonally. Thinking diagonally, thinking between the arts and the sciences, and not accepting, basically, disciplines. This was one reason why I fell in a kind of affectional relation with Vilém Flusser, because he was one of those intellectuals who did not accept any disciplines. He was disciplineless and he was placeless in a specific sense. He was nomadic. He had no home for the violence of the historical context, because of the violence of the historical context. What is forgotten a lot is that Vilém Flusser was perhaps not the first, but one of the very early intellectuals who had no mother tongue and no fatherland. The model which, or let's say the form of existence which became a model in the 21st century, to be homeless, to be nomadic, and to be without discipline. Flusser was modeling in a specific sense, and this is very interesting. Look from this perspective on Vilém Flusser, and he becomes immediately a personality, an intellectual personality of the 21st century, and not anymore from the 20th century. That's a very interesting point. He was sometimes in his lectures switching from one language to the other, from Portuguese into German, from German into Portuguese, from German into English to French, depends on the audience a little bit. I can't do that, I'm not so clever in languages, but he played with the languages, and this was very remarkable when you read his texts. I'm completely ignoring what I prepared, but I felt that I have to talk about that after your two lectures on introduction. When you read these different languages, the English, the Portuguese, the French Flusser, the German Flusser, you always have Flusser. This is very, very strange. He constructed through the different languages his own world, the Flusserian world, so to speak. You will recognize him, or I recognize him immediately, no matter in which language he wrote. And this is a very interesting phenomenon. I spoke about that with translators who translated him in various parts of the world, and they said, yeah, it's true. He always speaks in a very idiosyncratic way, these different languages, and never in the academic way the language should be spoken. And this is a crucial point. Please don't think Flusser as an academic thinker. He was an anarchist in a specific sense, and he was living outside of the academic institutions. His early so-called professorship in Sao Paulo is a long story. We could talk about that for hours on the background of his biography. I don't want to do that now. But within the academic scene in Germany, he was never accepted. He was never accepted as a philosopher. I don't know how it is in France, but I think it will be more or less the same. He is not accepted as an academic thinker, as an academic writer and philosopher, because he was ignoring disciplines. He wanted to work in between, diagonally to the disciplines, in relation to the disciplines, and this was extremely important. This leads me to another point I want to mention at the beginning. Flusser also somehow had an elitist position. Or I put it perhaps like that, he always was connected with a specific kind of minority. He was not working for the majority of intellectuality. And this is, for my own work as the director of the Flusser archive, very important. I did this job for 16 years because the institutions did not accept this institution, the Flusser archive. So it was extremely difficult to get money. Every year I had to fight for the little resources we needed to run the archive. It was not a rich institution, not at all. The big universities and the state did tolerate it, but they did not really support us. And this is now even a bit worse in Berlin, where the archive is located, because now the archive is run, as far as I know, I left it already 10 years ago, is run by a student who is passionate. And this is also a very interesting phenomena. I can see some of these colleagues here in the room. Flusser always needed friends, colleagues. He needed a network of friends who was supporting him and who was supporting his publications, who was inviting him. He needed the money. He was poor. When he came to Europe, he did not have much. They had a little bit money saved from his work in Brazil, but they didn't have much. This small house where Corinne lives now is beautiful, but it's very small and it's not an expensive place or something like that. He needed the money, so he was touring here permanently. The reason why he was touring so much was not because he did not like Robillon. Robillon is such a nice place, but he needed the fucking money. When Flusser gave his lectures, I mentioned that already in Frankfurt, in Berlin, or wherever it was. The first thing he demanded for was an envelope with the money for the lecture he will hold. This is very important also for reading his texts, because his texts were always also for an audience, for a paying audience, so to speak. A high respect for a paying audience. And this is different to a normal academic life where things are going very differently. So I'm completely lost already at the beginning, but I wanted to thank you to invite me, and I'm happy to be here in Aal. I was never here in this school, but I visited Aal quite a few times, because until a few years ago, a good friend of mine lived here, Anthony Moore. Some of you might know him as the ingenious band leader of Slap Happy, but some of you definitely know him as one of the composers for Pink Floyd, and he lived near the Colosseum, and I visited him again and again, and we had a very good time here in Aal, but then Aal became too expensive for him, and he had to leave it. He could not afford it as a rock musician anymore, who is not playing for millions of people, and he is now living in South England again, and so I'm here in Aal. Thank you that I have this possibility. I will talk about something which I especially prepared for you. I was thinking a lot what I should do today. Of course, and I'm very grateful to Marcel that he did this job already. Of course, I could have gone into the philosophy of photography and reread it again and again. Many of you did that already. I did it many times. I thought this might be a little bit boring, but I thought there is a need for rereading Flusser from the point of view of the beginning of the 21st century, sorry, 2025. So what I prepared basically is a short manifesto revisiting the philosophy of photography under the perspective of artificial extelligences. I will explain the term in a short time because it's a bit irritating perhaps at the beginning, artificial extelligences. But before I start this, if I have enough time, I would like to sum up very few aspects of Flusser's philosophy of photography. People are going already. I think this is extremely impolite. I don't know why. When you are going to a lecture and it's an international conference, of course, it's absolutely clear that people speak English. It's our Esperanto. I could speak German. Then hardly anybody would be here anymore. This is my natural language. I have a mother tongue opposite to Flusser, but of course I speak in Esperanto because many people at least understand basically what I'm talking about. Anyway, at the beginning, I would like to accentuate a few aspects of the philosophy of photography using my epistemological interests of today. Vilém Flusser sees the camera first and foremost as an apparatus. All apparatuses, I quote him, all apparatuses and not just computers are calculating machines. And in this sense, they are artificial intelligences. This is a quote from 45 years ago, or 44 years ago, or 43 years ago, including the camera. As artifacts generated from scientific language, Flusser was writing about that a lot, as artifacts generated from scientific language, cameras are for him, in principle, we heard this term already, black boxes that simulate thinking in the sense of a combination game with number-like symbols and thereby mechanize this thinking in such a way that in future people will become less and less competent for it and will have to leave it more and more to the apparatuses. There is a clear trace here for the media realities of the 21st century, which I will pursue further in a moment. Flusser straightforwardly calls what the photographic apparatuses generate technical images, a special variant of meaningful surfaces, as he put them. He explains, I quote him again, ontologically, traditional images signify phenomena, Marcel was quoting that already, while technical images signify concepts. The technical images absorb all history into themselves and form an eternally revolving memory of society. This is an extremely important aspect. I will come back to that in my manifesto when I talk about the training camps of artificial intelligences and the archives. Flusser's argumentative connection between the apparatus as a black box, its programming, and the possibility of its use by the homo ludens, the playing human being as opposed to the functioning artifact, is decisive for a possible art through photography. The coding of technical images takes place inside this black box, and consequently any critique of technical images must be aimed at illuminating their interior. We come back to this aspect. As long as we do not have such a critique, Flusser writes, at our disposal, we will remain illiterate as far as technical images are concerned. For Flusser, illuminating the interior of the apparatus is the absolute prerequisite for playfully varying photography as cultura experimentalis, this is my term, and thus gaining aesthetic added value from it. I would like to make a short insert as a motto for my speech. As you can see here, I used a line which I have written 5 years ago for a rock song. Before machines became human, humans had become machine. Before machines became human, humans became machine. If we don't accept that, we don't understand anything of the discussion of artificial extelligences or so-called intelligences and all the rest of it. I performed this song together with the band of FM Einheit, the former member of Einstürzende Neubauten, and because Bill from Chicago should be here in the audience. There he is! And we had a discussion last night about industrial music. I thought I insert this into the lecture. This is the band FM Einheit here on the right hand, the great rhythmical heart of Einstürzende Neubauten, new collapsing buildings from Berlin, and Rika Blunk, singer, and at the drums, Saskia von Klitzing, and the other members of the band are here on the left. So let's quickly go into this.
Circular conclusiveness. I am an artifact, therefore I am.
Zirkuläre Vollschlüssigkeit, circular conclusiveness. Before machines became human, humans had become machines. Programmed by the church, disciplined in confession chairs, controlled by governments, drilled in armies, organized by education.
Circular conclusiveness. I am an artifact, therefore I am.
Circular conclusiveness. My eyes are made of lenses, seeing the world much more beautiful than it ever was.
Last part of the text I have here, I can read it for you. My eyes are piezo microphones sensitive to every noise in the subterranean and sublunar worlds. Circular conclusiveness, I am an artifact, therefore I am. Of course, this is a play with your biggest philosopher, René Descartes, and I allowed me this kind of frankness. My heart is a clockwork, beating precisely without getting tired. My soul is calculation. I dream algorithmic. My nightmare is a lockdown of energy and supply. Circular conclusiveness. I am an artifact. Therefore, I am. Okay, let's start with that. That's a starting point for discussing media theory in the 21st century, in my opinion. Without that, we get completely lost or we get completely conservative, which is also the case at the moment in many variations of media thinking People think if they recall humanity and the concept of humanities from the last centuries, they can win the future. I don't believe in that. Humanities failed in a very, very deep way during the 20th century, latest with fascism, with the Americans throwing the nuclear bomb on Japan. This is completely forgotten. Nobody talks about that anymore. Apart from Japan, of course, where it's extremely present all the time. Nobody else, no state in the world ever did something like that, a big crime like that, apart from the Nazis, of course, with the Holocaust, which was the same period of time. In 1948, a German philosopher and writer whom I like a lot started a text. Flusser also admired him, but he never met him. Max Bense, he started a text in 1948 with a sentence, "Our existence has become basically technical." 1948. This is a starting point for mixing the card new and trying to find out what you can do. This was, by the way, also a very important background for the founding of this Institute for Language in a Technological Age in Berlin. It was founded in 1961. For those of you who know a little bit about history, 1961 is the year when the wall was built. This institute was founded as a kind of a utopia, a hope that with the help of machines and the combination of machines and poetry, we might be able to create a better world than the one which was behind us with fascism and the nuclear bombing of parts of Japan. That was a very important point. Right from the beginning, in thinking media, there was a kind of utopian moment. Let's challenge the machines. Perhaps we can make something better. I mean, I was responsible after I left the universities, especially for art schools. I founded the famous school in Cologne, the Academy for Arts and Media, in the 1990s, and I was leading it as the founding rector till 2000 or something, and I founded faculties and institutes and all kinds of things everywhere. But what was always important for me, and this is one of the critique I have towards Flusser, what is always important to me is that I'm responsible when I'm dealing with young people for their future, or I'm at least co-responsible for their future. And this means I have to give them hope. This is the basic thing I have to do. It should be not my task to screen, to project the apocalypse on the wall, what technology can, what kind of disasters it can create. No, the opposite. There should be the technological world, the media world is a world of potentialities, of possibilities. We should do something which creates a different kind of a future. For my taste, Vilém Flusser, also his book on the philosophy of photography, was not strong enough into the experimental thinking of photography and other new media. He talked about it a lot, but as we know, he wrote his texts on a mechanical typewriter. He knew the computer as a phenomenon, but not as a tool and an instrument you can go inside and discover a new world, for example. This is what always was for me also a critical point. But let me, I'm losing time. Let me come to the manifesto. I wanted to introduce it, but I skipped this with a short introduction to the current affairs, which would have been quite political. The sense why I put this kind of introduction into my lecture is very clear. We who have been rather harsh in our criticism of established social structures such as late capitalism for decades, now find ourselves in a paradoxical situation. We are defending the achievements of advanced systems of coexistence, such as the separation of powers, equality, and democratic institutions. I never thought that I would be in this role. By contrast, the criminal protagonists of global power and wealth stand for irritation, for brutal disruptions, ruthless exploitation of people and nature, and the deliberate disturbance of equilibria through the re-propagation of autocratic forms of government based on the power of money, unconditioned egomania, and stupidity. This is a very important point for media theory, because we are developing a different relation to what is called the system and the world of grammars and order. Suddenly it becomes valuable under specific perspectives to have a kind of a reliable order, and not just the law of the richest and the law of the biggest and strongest. It will have consequences, I'm absolutely sure, for media thinking and media praxis in the future, and some of it I address in my see here, I'm skipping a lot. I'm coming directly to the manifesto. These are the 9 points. They are, don't be afraid, they are quite short, which I will deliver to you. The first one, why artificial intelligences? Our mind, this is a quotation by a famous writer, our mind is to become a sensually perceptible machine, not in us, but outside us. In German, unser Geist soll sinnlich wahrnehmbare Maschine werden, nicht in uns, aber außer uns. Our mind is to become a sensually perceptible machine, not in us, but outside us. This is a quote from Novalis, the famous poet and writer, whom you all will know. When Novalis wrote this 200 years ago, he implicitly considered something eminently important for today's debate on learning machines. Automatic text generators run on hardware that is not located inside our bodies, but outside. Machines are not yet completely incorporated into us, but they confront us at the technically and as the technically and psychically other. With intelligence, I refer to the inner experience that we call thinking, understanding, and remembering. Thinking outside the body is thinking through media. For example, text, films, computers, networks. That is why I prefer to speak and write of technical extelligences or artificial extelligences, AE. It's just one letter, but it creates a great difference. I use the term in plural because there are a lot of techno systems competing with each other on the market. Technical extelligences are no ontological existences or something like that. They are commodities. And they are sold on the worldwide market for a lot of money. I use the term in plural because there are a lot of techno systems competing with each other on the market. When the interfaces will be so far developed that the separations between the biological and the technological will run within our bodies, one might be able to speak of artificial intelligence. But this is the future, the far future. Novalis wrote about the sensations of thinking in the body or inside the body, über die Empfindungen des Denkens im Körper, about the sensations of thinking inside of the body, as a materiological thinking romantic, Novalis assumed that the mind is the oxygen of the body. A very beautiful thought figure which goes back to the pre-Socratic philosophers, but we have no time to investigate that further. Second, aion, eternity. Artificial intelligences operate in a time mode that the ancient Greeks call ionic. This mode far exceeds the capabilities of human perception, which is bound to chronology. In the coming decades, the grand narrative of learning machines will transform into a construct that is not yet clearly recognizable, merging with biodesign, cybernetics, neural technology, and quantum physics to usher in an era of hybrid beings in a post-human world. We can speculate about this reality, but since we cannot yet understand it, we cannot, of course, describe it. Like alchemy in the early modern period, artificial intelligences are one of those phenomena that we create without being able to fully comprehend its implications and consequences. That's an important point for me. To put it very simple, the history went like that. Artificial intelligence, I put it very simple now, was invented, it was there, it started to work, and then people asked, what's the ethic of this fucking stuff we have created there? They asked these very important questions after it was in the world already and while it was running. And this is a very problematic attitude. This is one of the reasons, by the way, why I made in 2018, together with Peter Weibel, a large exhibition at the ZKM in Karlsruhe on Ramon Lull. The great thinker of the 14th century in Mallorca, the Catalan thinker. He invented paper machines, which you can call rough artifacts for an artificial intelligence. With the help of these paper machines, the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims should have been able to communicate with each other. He was thinking the ethics, the possibility of the three book religions to understand each other. He was choosing the ethical aspect as the motivation for developing his machines, not the other way around. So we can learn from the deep time history, which is my specialty, as most of you know. We can learn a lot for the present days. Unfortunately, when we did this exhibition in 2018, it was a strange kind of a miracle, because people did not understand it. The journalists did not understand it. They did not know. They said to Peter and me, "Yep, then I have to start to read books to understand it." Yeah, of course, this is your duty as a journalist. And so the newspapers did not really publish anything about it. So it stood a very elitist exhibition. We did it also in Switzerland, in Lausanne, but it was important that it existed. We put a lot of calculating machines into the exhibition. Leibniz was, of course, playing an important role for the exhibition. And this Ramon Lull, I mean, a great person. And when I'm confronted with such persons, I always ask myself, what is technical progress? What is progress of civilization? This guy in the 14th century was so much further than I am now, and that others are now today. Where is progress? It's somewhere else. It's perhaps in the past. I don't know. But it's not so clear that it is in the future. So, aion, eternity. The third point is algorithmical artifacts, and this is very important for rereading Flusser. Novalis quote, if you want to read it. From statistically derived patterns and algorithmic processes emerges, like a phoenix rising from the ashes of the or the lapis philosophorum of alchemy, a new virtual appearance that will in future outshine everything we know of the realities invented by Homo sapiens. I no longer refer to the visual agents that emerge from the generative operations which we provisionally, despite the risk of misunderstanding, still call images or even pictures. I do not refer to them as photographs anymore, but as statistical algorithmic artifacts, or somewhat more cumbersome but more complete, algorithmic artifacts from the spirit of statistics and probability theory. The term is unwieldy, but it adequately opens up the semantic field in which we operate. The optomechanical, chemical, or digital photographic image is also an artifact. But those visual facts that are generated neither by means of photomechanical optics nor by any kind of chemical process have emerged from algorithms that, based on our linguistic instructions, are sent through the image archives of the past in order to optionally offer new visual sensations in accordance with the prompt that we formulated. In the best cases, they produce visible phenomena in the planning stage that are permanently in the process of appearing, and disappearing again. In the worst and most frequent cases, they show how successful the image industries have been in manufacturing fantasy. To capture them on paper, print them out, and even frame them seems perverse to me and inappropriate to the techno nature of the algorithmical artifact. So, photograph, a word which is crossed for my manifesto when I talk about artificial intelligence. The fourth point, this is the argument which I have written down for you, and like Marcel, I have used DeepL to give you a French version of it. Fourth, Olympus and Hades. Artificial intelligences such as GPT-4, Stable Diffusion XL, Midjourney 6, and OpenAI Sora are capable of creating highly complex realities, no doubt, that are already beginning to exceed our understanding of what humans are capable of. They are shaping the world we currently experience and are cooperating vigorously and with enormous energy in creating a future world. At the same time, artificial intelligences are fundamentally blind. This term blindness, the characteristics of blindness, is also part of Flusser's text. They do not act as seeing or even quasi-seeing machines like film or television. In its fundamentally self-regenerating process, artificial intelligences search for patterns in a sea of stored data without having access to the actual nature of what is supposed to create and ultimately does create. The realm artificial intelligences explore with their abilities is bloodless. Hades, the realm of Hades. In ancient intellectual history, it corresponds to Hades, the realm of the dead. Artificial intelligences have no access to the divine Olympus, where life and orgies are celebrated. They are condemned to exist in the dark realm of shadows. Although they can simulate cognitive processes, they have no access to the deeper meaning of the data they process. Artificial intelligences only know the semantics of the machine platform on which they run. They are comparable to an actor who only memorizes the parts of the script that he has to speak. An actor who only memorizes the parts of the script that he or she has to speak, but does not know the entire book or the plot described in the book. That's a very important point. Bertolt Brecht describes such kind of actors as monkeys. This enables artificial intelligences to select, interpret, and synthesize quickly and effectively within a clearly defined context. But they do not know what they are doing, as they have neither the capacity to understand what they have synthesized, nor the ability to reflect on their own current intervention. The metaphysicians of the dark, or I call the artificial intelligences the metaphysicians in the dark, that we call them, perform on a technical platform of probability operations without any deeper understanding of the philosophical, ethical, or existential significance of their own creations. What does that mean for critique? My fifth point, very short. Criticism of art, literature, music, cinema, and photography thus faces a dilemma. It has no criteria for evaluating machine-generated realities. No criteria at all, because they do not work in confrontation with these entities. Where are such criteria to come from if the artifacts produced are beyond hermeneutics and cannot themselves make evaluations or sensitive judgments? With his, I think I brought an image of it, you know that of course very well. With his 100,000, I say it in English, 100,000 billion poems now from 1961, Raymond Queneau set an experimental milestone for the diverse potential of technical interventions in complex events. Queneau quotes a sentence by Alan Turing as the motto for his work, 1961. Only a machine can appreciate a sonnet written by another machine. Seule une machine, and so on. You can read it in French there. Will learning machines also be the adequate critics of artificial intelligences in the future, I ask? They understand algorithmic artifacts better because they share the same semantics better than we. They know the sound that is created when huge data sets are combed through in fractions of a second. They have the criteria to measure how well the artifacts have been trained and whether they have fulfilled the prompts effectively and with statistical and informational eloquence. But if all this is true, then the question arises, where will artificial intelligence-generated art exist when humans are no longer its primary viewers, but machines? Does it even have a place? Is placeless art conceivable? My sixth point, training, camps, archives, one of the centers, of course, of the whole debate and the discussion. What we cannot retain in our minds, we capture in machines. For artificial intelligences, there is only one reality, and this is a quite ascetic reality. Their reality is formed by the camps where they are trained to generate the written texts, the audible and visible artifacts that are promptly prescribed to them. The training camps are containers overflowing with knowledge, archives. The material left behind that human civilization has preserved, digitized and made available to telematic networks for exploitation due to the boundless vanity and limited receptivity of humans. Through the mediation process organized by artificial intelligences, the gigantic archives which remain imaginary in their entirety become a prospective matter, a kind of prospective archaeology, which is one of my favorite anarchic disciplines. The digitized material of past presence generates a new mode of time to which we are not yet accustomed, namely a present that is projected into a possible future through its appearance. This is quite heavy and complicated, so it might make sense to repeat that. The digitized material of past presence generates a new mode of time to which we are not yet accustomed, namely a present that is projected into a possible future through its appearance. Its justification lies above all in the fact that it is instantly transformed back into an exploitable past. In a reversal of Louis Bourges, the great poet and writer, of his idea that we are already the oblivion that we will be, we can assume today that our existences have already been transformed into archives of what we will have been for the world of artificial intelligences. This is this kind of prospective archaeology. You know, we work, live, and articulate ourselves for an archive which immediately is transformed into a possible future with the help of this extremely fast learning machines. Seventh, what should artificial intelligence demonstrate then? What can it show? What can they show if they don't show photographs anymore, for example? The best critical reflection on artificial intelligences is to use them experimentally and thus critically. In recent years, I have seen several thousand visualized algorithmic artifacts, mostly unintentionally because they were sent to me. Here, look what I've done last night. 500 new pictures, endless variations on a subject, a figurative constellation, a color or shape idea. Two things struck me at first when I looked at all these surfaces. On the one hand, the déjà vu experience, the distinct perception of having seen the artifacts before, either in this form or in a similar one, as pictorial objects. I don't find it particularly original that a visual statue of liberty suddenly exists holding a torch in not just one, but in both hands. This is an example by the very, very intelligent film director Alexander Kluge. I don't know what he finds in this kind of picture as a possibility wave or potential wave. I think it's quite stupid. When the statue has gained nothing else in terms of aesthetics, form or semantics, quite the contrary. And I remembered the aesthetic statues of early computer animations and our damning verdict at the time. They are as flat as the Californian West. Vilém Flusser reacted indignantly when, in a public discussion at the Berlin Academy of Arts 35 years ago, he was shown figurative constructs that could have come from an illustrated history book as examples of advanced computer animation. While for the philosophical writer from Prague, traditional images mean the world, for him, techno-images mean texts that mean images, which in turn mean the world. Even photographs were not significant to him as attempts by the photographer to create an image of the world, but rather as attempts to create an image of the concepts that the photographer had formed with regard to an image. That's something completely different. Techno-images, according to one of the basic theses of Vilém Flusser, are always based on scientific language. Media are worlds of possibilities. According to Flusser, this is no longer original. When we demand that contemporary algorithmic artifacts should be operational, transformative, and above all, make the invisible visible, we are confronting the application worlds of artificial intelligences with the projections of the avant-garde of the 20th century. To go beyond this probably means abandoning the idea of the image completely when it comes to algorithmic artifacts. The techno-image of photography, and even more so the time image of film, have already cast considerable doubt on the representational power of images. Now it is the time to design a media reality in which the cherished distinctions between individual media realities no longer make sense, at least not when understood ontologically. And it is time to develop a culture of expanded questioning. Most difficult thing, perhaps. Western culture, in particular, has been extremely successful in perfecting cultural techniques of answering questions over the last few centuries. They were answer machines. The vast majority of people use artificial intelligence in the simplest and most obvious way, namely as an oracle. They engage in dialogue with a learning machine with the aim of obtaining useful, definite, and effective answers. A possible subversive energy of users, on the other hand, could lie in raising questions that we have not asked ourselves before. In 2025, Berlin-based photographer and cameraman Thomas Kutschka generated a series of algorithmical artifacts that he calls temporary appearances. In the generative process, he focuses on the preliminary stage of generating a quasi-photographic color image. This is slightly complicated. Please listen carefully, otherwise you don't get it. He freezes the tiny preview files as the image is being created, exports them, and saves them. So he is freezing part of the very, very fast process. What we can see and reflect on is thus the extremely minimal difference between what is to be depicted, the text command, the prompt, and the artifact shown by the machine, the in-between, the fraction of a moment in the creation of a pictorial impression. A time-critical intervention, I would call this kind of praxis, a time-critical intervention which also brings us back to the very early time-based media like film and video, but it makes a lot of sense for me. Another example, otherwise it would stay too abstract for you, Dead Code Anatomies is a current series of 4 algorithmic scripts with which Argentine artist Marcelo Mercado investigates mechanisms of physical violence that are filtered, broken, and suppressed by procedural representation systems. Each work which he presents is based on an analog black and white photograph taken in 1990 with Kodak Plus X125 film. The photographs show 4 indigenous members of the Quom people from Rock Sans Peña, Chaco in Argentine. At the time the photograph was taken, 3 of the children were smiling at the camera, you can see that. However, the mother refused to be photographed. Her image is blurred because she turned away from the camera during the shot. But now the decisive thing comes. 35 years later, these black and white images are both visually reproduced and reprocessed through algorithmic code. For Mercado, this rewriting, you can see it up on the upper part of the projection, does not reconstruct the analog moment, but rather distorts and encodes its afterlife. The algorithms do not formulate a testimony, but rather a systemic latency. Violence is not shown in the image, in the photographic image, but carried out. It becomes procedural, filtered through structures of misconduct, exception, and protocol breakdown. The resulting works produce so-called algorithmic remnants, structural residues of trauma stored in unsolved functions, aborted execution paths, and controlled error environments. I think it's already 1:10. I should be very careful, and so I will jump the deep time section. I think yes, I can do that. This would be one possibility, in my opinion, to work critically with the algorithmical artifacts, the artificial intelligences, to somehow go inside of them and bring out the deep time which is stored inside of them, because this time is immediately not capable. When you see the image, remember, for example, this statue image which Alexander Kluge showed, you don't see any history. What you see is a flat surface. You don't see anything, how this, through what kind of archives, why does it have two burning things in its hand, and so on. You have no access to the archival structure and containers through which it was generated. But this is an enormous task, I think, for artistic experiments. I will stop with the last section, which is perhaps the most provocative one, the technological singularity. What legacy do we want to leave behind with our excessively inflated sense of self in modern Europe to artificial intelligences on their labyrinthine path in search of their own technological singularity? This is the aim of all technical intelligence. This is what they want, nothing else. I want to be singular. I want to be individual. This is what they whisper all the time, and this is what our discussion is about and our fears are about. In search of an identity that would represent their final victory over the visual power of Homo sapiens, Homo faber, and Homo artefactus, like the powerful Alleluia in Bach's cantata, A Child is Born. This unique particularity marks the point at which learning machines may have reached a level of exponential self-optimization and transformed the former human civilization into a post-humanist reality. In religion, the profanation of the original miracle of God's incarnation was achieved for several centuries through the planetary establishment of Catholicism and Protestantism. Perhaps the future deep time of artificial intelligences, if they mutate into intelligence ones, lies in faith rather than knowledge. The theory and practice of alchemy remained in a singular ambiguity between faith and knowledge. Vilém Flusser came from Prague, the capital of alchemy in pre-modern Europe. This is why I mentioned the praxis and theory of alchemy a few times. I end my lecture with a reference to radical alchemist thinking. Let us not make again the mistake of separating that which can only be thought and that which only can be felt, touched, and made. Let us meet the new realities, hybrid between calculable controlled systems and the nervous, sensitive matter of the real, with a new expanded hermeneutic, which I am calling expanded materiologies. From my perspective, this is at present an adequate method by means of which we may be capable of meeting the challenges presented to us by artificial intelligences. Of course, you know perhaps better than me, when you are familiar with French art history, matériologie, the term which I just used. Matériologie is what Jean Dubuffet, whose early artworks I very much admire, called his 1961 exhibition at the Daniel Cordier Gallery in Frankfurt. Materiology is the study of the connection between heaven and earth. Quote Dubuffet. Leaving aside the pathos in this remark, one is left with a strong term with which to describe an artistic poetic gesture that knows how to open itself to be intellect and to the profane, to the material. That recognizes the unique subjective world proper to material and allows its heterogeneities free range to play in order to unite with it as an indissoluble hybrid reality, comprised of nature plus that which is made and that which is thought. Thanks a lot. I hope you got and can make something out of that. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much for all this explanation and conferences. Thank you.
Thank you.